Let's cut right to the chase. Creative people are pretty nuts, and I know this because I'm one of them. If you're like me, you wonder, how do people get over the issues we face? That's what this show is all about. Think of each episode as a warm bath for the soul. We're all in this together, so let's do something good with the time we have left. This show is my love letter to the human condition. This, my friends, is Sentimental Illness. All right, guys. Hey, welcome me back. Welcome me to Sentimental Illness with my new booth. I'm very excited to be here today. This is a first test drive of the official new space. It's already warm in here, but it's summertime. What do you expect? Look, normally I would do some crazy intro. I would do some crazy long monologue because I am a self-serving, petulant artist. But today I shall not. My guest, Alex Crescioni, Stygian Sound, Los Angeles producer, mixer, incredible fellow. I say that with a caveat, and that's this. We've never met. Do I know he's incredible? No. Do I think he's incredible? Yes. Let me explain why. A few years ago, I interviewed a well-known record producer named Chris Collins, and Chris Collier. Well, God, can you tell I've had an argument with my son this morning? A great guy. I really dug him. And for whatever reason, because social media is what social media is, I found that Alex and I had shared interests. And I actually don't know how we ended up connecting. I don't know if I ended up following him, he ended up following me, but for whatever reason, we connected online. That's to say that over the last 2 years, I've watched what he does, and I am so insanely impressed with who he is as a human, how he puts himself out there, of course, which is, I guess, relative to the moment. And that means I don't really know who he is, why I wanted to have him on the show today, but I felt something about him. Something I recognized in his heart, something I recognized in the way he puts himself out there. Something that is very transparent, a different feel, a different vibe, a different lifestyle, but something that really, really draws me. I actually did something in honor of him today that I didn't want to share with him pre-show, which is Alex is sort of famous for having very, very good lighting in his videos. And he has this sort of purple vibe, which, of course, is built around what I would call the goth vibe. I know I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm going to sound like an old man here. Like, when goth was invented by The Cure, that sort of dumb thing. But Alex likes purple. Well, I like purple. And normally I would have purple rock and rollin' today. But I thought I would add yellow because purple and yellow, they make a great bruise together. So that's my vibe for today. Look, I want to intro him. I wrote this, so I am going to read this. So I'm probably embarrassing myself, but it is what it is. Hey, I got a bad internet connection. Alex Crescioni, he's my guest today. Let me tell you what little I know of him. I admire him for his quiet perseverance. And I know that, again, sounds very strange. But what I recognize in him is his professionalism. He has the ability to make waves, to be significant in a world that is lost with chatter and noise. He produces incredible music. I've listened to a lot of his work. I really, really like that. And being a former professional drummer, I recognize what's good, man. I know what's good. I think he's a great guy. He's very passionate. And what I love about the word passionate means to suffer. And I recognize the skill set in Alex's life. I recognize his ability to suffer for his art. And he's produced a lot of great material. I mentioned earlier, he owns Stygian Sound in Los Angeles. He's friends of a few of my friends. And I think he is probably on the cusp of recording some of the most important records in modern history. There's just something about him. So I believe Alex has vision, hoping to get a little bit out of them today before he takes off to his heart out. But we will get rolling now, so I'm going to bring him on. Yes, the music of the intro, the man of the moment. So glad to introduce him to you today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring him on. Alex Crescioni. How are you doing, brother?
What's up, Rob? Dude, wow, what an intro, man. Thank you so much.
Well, sometimes I overwrite it.
I loved it, man. Thank you so much. That I was almost about to tear up for a second, dude. That means a lot to me. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, when I talk on my shows, the one thing I've discovered, and I'm going with this, so just hear me out real quick, is I have discovered that we all have a superpower. I talk about it all the time. I believe in it. It's called discernment. This isn't a religious exercise. It does, of course, get sort of lumped in with people who are Christians, for example. This idea that God gives you this ability to do this sort of super secret thing, right? The ability to sort of read minds or see through people. I don't think that's how it works, but I do think that everybody has that sixth sense, that ability to discern, to see through the clouds, so to speak. And I think there's a reason certain people pop in life, whether it's online or if it's, like this personally. But there's a moment when, a person walks into a room and you recognize something about them. It might be their look. It might be something that you find attractive, but it's typically their way. And what I've seen with you is your way of being, particularly in your interviews. And again, the material you'll put out there. So it's easy to say good words about you, man. It really is.
Wow. Thank you so much, man. I'm honored that you checked out my interviews and my podcast as well, because it's just a labor of love, just like yourself, so thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. And again, I know we have a heart out today, so we do have to kind of, I don't want to call it race through, but I want to get to some good things with you. When I was driving to get my morning coffee today, I'm often blasted with what I would call a download from above. I get a question or I get a thought, or maybe I hear something in another interview show that I think would be worth bringing up to my guest. And, what I heard this morning, I am riffing from somebody else. I'm not going to tell you where I got it, but I want to start out with something different. So instead of saying like, hey, Alex, tell me about your childhood, how'd you end up how you are? I want to know, what do you think is the key to a successful life? And before you answer, for me, it's about how do we navigate our self-interests, our negative feelings about ourselves, our positive hopes for ourselves, and what we're dealing with, those outside influences. How do you get through your world, and how are you the person that you are now?
That's a great question. Like most people, I'm still a student. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure that out, to be honest. And I think it's a lifelong journey. But for me, I find as I get older, I'm 38 now, but I find the more that you live for your truth and your purpose and helping others, I think that is the most fulfilling. And for me, that's through music. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to help others in creating and producing and manifesting their music and their dreams. And that's all I've ever wanted to do. And that's what I'm doing. And it's definitely a passion. It's definitely what you said earlier about suffering. It's definitely a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I look at you and I think I admit a bit of envy. I really do. Now I don't mean that in the sense of it being a negative feeling, but I look at you and I say, now here's a guy that has never quit. He's never given up. To quote the movie, he's never surrendered. He just continues forward. And I know so many people who make choices in life that sort of, they willfully sabotage themselves and then they complain about it later. Yeah. They don't even know why they've done it, but they have. I admit to a little bit of this myself in my early 30s. I made a few choices probably out of fear. And I'm curious, obviously fear isn't much of an influence in your life, or doesn't seem to be. but how do you overcome those sort of internal objections?
Well, yeah, there's definitely a lot of fear, and I don't think that ever goes away for most people, and until you reach even the people, the top tier, people in their career path and whatever. If you're even you're financially comfortable, there's all kinds of other obstacles to face. Just because you're comfortable in that regard does not mean everything else is going great. And I think that's a major misconception. But for me, yeah, I'm basically just trying to take it day by day, and there is still a lot of fear. And I get people telling me, like, often, I make like a conscious effort to check in on people, because I think it's important, especially like people I've worked with and friends, and I have a system for that, because it's hard to consistently reach out to so many people that you've worked with or have come across paths with. But I have a system for that, and a lot of them have said, "Oh, you look so busy all the time. It looks like you're doing so great." And that isn't always the case. And right now it's a dark time for me because just of the state of the industry. But fear is always there. I don't think it'll ever go away, because there is always a chance. There's no guarantees in music. There's no guarantees in life. So I think if you just welcome the fear with open arms, then there's nothing to be afraid of, really. I mean, fear is just an obstacle. So
Yeah.
That's
really well put. And, knowing what I know about the industry, meaning I was a part of it up until, say, 2003, 2004, to imagine the incredible shift in need for a studio. The fact that people now say, well, I can do it at home for almost nothing. You know what I mean? How do you break past that? How do you, I don't want to say convince, but how do you alter an artist's perception that working with yourself is a professional endeavor, and that it's almost a requirement if you want your material to sound and feel at a level of professionalism that you may not reach at home? I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but how do you, in a sense, convince people to work with you versus doing it at home for free?
Yeah. Well, I don't convince anyone. People that want to work with me, they get it. And I don't spend time convincing. I feel that's a waste of time, and for both parties. Either you understand that you need help and you want a certain sound, or you want to work with a certain person for certain reasons because of their taste, their experience, their sonic palette. But no, I mean, it's a very dark time for the music industry. Like, one of the most famous recording studios in Hollywood just closed the record plant. And they're a huge, major studio. And it's like, well, if they're closing, like, there's no hope for anyone, really. I mean, because it's true, like a place like the record plant, they're, if you want to go in there for a day rate, $2,000 a day ish. And the argument is, well, I can go get a laptop, and I can go get a laptop and some sample libraries and use AI and make my record for that for less than that. So it's a very scary time in the industry. But yeah, I don't spend any time trying to convince anyone, really. It's either you want to make a record or you don't,
Yeah. And I guess that's a foolish question on my part. It's, but it is a curiosity. I don't know how people weather. I have a buddy who owns London Bridge, just north of Seattle, where a lot of those iconic Seattle records were done. Former producer Rick Parasher, who passed away maybe 5-6 years ago, in a sense, sold it to my buddy. And for the most part, it's small local artists and commercial work when you can get it. And of course, I don't know the inside of his financials, but I imagine it's a terrifying endeavor to know you have this giant nut every month, and how are you supposed to cover it? Are you in the old Sound City studio space? Is that what I read correctly or incorrectly?
Yeah, well, it's called the Sound City Center. It's a complex. So when you pull in, there's three different buildings. It's like it's like a lot, and you drive up, and there's a
Right.
parking lot, there's an upper parking lot, but there's a front building where originally back in the day it was a bunch of offices, but now it's all production suites. So my whole building is filled with different production suites and studios, and below us is Eric's guitar shop, which is a guitar repair shop, which is he's a very famous guitar repairman. But yeah, the whole building is studios. So the main building is still there, but it's rented out by a newer tenant where they do a bunch of label stuff. They actually shot Daisy Jones and the Six there.
Right on.
For Prime. But yeah, man, it's in the iconic space, and it's still like thriving, man. There's still a lot of people here, a lot of different studios, a lot of different producers and mixers and people doing their thing. So it's cool that we have a little community built over here.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I think that's very clear about you is your distinct style, your sound, your look. Again, I sort of embarrassed myself earlier when I talked about this sort of goth thing, right? Or the heart of darkness, the look of a certain sound, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
And I will admit that I grew up on a wildly divergent musical path. I started in the classical space. I moved into jazz and then into progressive rock and metal. As a drummer, those were the things I did. And it's probably because, as I often say, music with lots of notes in it is thrilling for a drummer. There's something about doing the Neil Peart thing, and doing giant fills when you play Tom Sawyer.
Right.
I realize that that's its own animal, and as embarrassing as it might be, it is what it is. But I would love to understand the music of your world. And I know that's a strange way of placing it, but, I know there's an aesthetic that makes people automatically judge things, whether it's the metal space, the thrash metal look with the jean jackets and the patches, right? It's almost like being a part of a roller coaster club where you're a nerd, right? There's a nerd aspect to it. The gothy Cat House sort of look, the darker look, the Kat Von D look, who you interviewed recently. What I sound so stupid. What do you call this now? What is it? What is it called? And is there a requirement in your space to work with artists who have that similar vibe because you share the same sort of ideology?
Yeah, good question. I don't personally resonate with or identify as goth. To me, I just like black. I like wearing black, and it has nothing to do with being goth or gothic. I don't even know what that means, to be honest. I don't know what that entails. To me, I think about the original gothic style of music. I'll think of a Bauhaus, you know what I mean?
Love it.
Which is I'm not even that crazy about that kind of music. So for me, I think it's just people. I think it's more of an aesthetic thing. People, you can just immediately point someone out oh, goth, all black.
Sure.
But there's plenty of people in finance and in the film industry. There are all kinds of different people that wear black on a day-to-day basis that have nothing to do with dark music. So to me, it's silly. But I don't know. I don't really identify as that. But
That's
the music,
cool.
Yeah, the music is for me, it's a whole spectrum of sound. I mean, it's there's so many subgenres within the genre, so it's hard to really just pigeonhole it. But yeah, I mean, there's everything from straight up metal to death metal to black metal to doom metal to symphonic death metal to djent, which is another genre of metal, deathcore. There's just so many subgenres of that. So it's really it's a lot to keep track of, but I don't really I don't really care genre, what the genre is. I just want to make great music that impacts people, that makes people feel something. So I try not to really worry about the genre,
Yeah. Well, I have to, I guess I should say I should apologize. It's not, and I know it doesn't offend you to ask that question. It's a
No, of course not.
it's a dumbhearted question.
No.
It's an ignorant question. It's probably one of those dumb get off my lawn moments where I realize, wow, I am completely out of touch with a certain subset, not of people, because I believe people are people, right? You like what you like. We all like what we like. We don't even know why we like half of what we like. We just do because, for whatever reason, whatever purpose, cultural, familial, racial, whatever you want to call it, what we bump into in life. I mentioned earlier that I started in the classical space.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like the influence question, but I am curious, what were your original musical motivations?
It was classical as well. I started with, my parents put me on, there's this method of learning classical music called the Suzuki method.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's basically learning by ear. So I learned by ear at a very young age how to play like classical piano, and then I switched to guitar. But yeah, I'm there with you, man. I started with classical.
Wow, that's rad. That's rad. Okay, so then as a producer, a full-time living legend producer that I'm talking to, what kind of music, you mentioned deathcore, for example, which is interesting to me because I don't hear that too often. I've interviewed over the few years that I've done this, a number of deathcore artists. What kind of music do you think deserves a bigger audience?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think all of it, man, all of it, as long as it's good and it touches you, I think all of it deserves a bigger audience because everything is so pushed down. The industry is so saturated with, forgive me for saying this, but it's so saturated with crap music. And it's like, there's so much of it that it pushes all of the gems farther into the void of Spotify releases. You know what I mean? It's like, but I don't know. I think there's beauty in all genres really. So it's hard to say, but I think it's just true artists who really, who know how to play their instruments, who can play a song all the way through, who are actually an artist. Because there's so many people like masquerading as artists these days that if you asked them to sing their song all the way through from top to bottom, they couldn't do it, or play it all the way through from top to bottom, they couldn't do it. So I just feel like there's so many great artists who practice every day, who actually know their songs, who can perform their songs. I think more of those artists deserve a chance.
Right. They don't need a degree in cut and paste.
Right.
All right, let's do this.
And now it's time for self-diagnosis.
All right, Alex, we're going to do something different today. We're going to do what I call the deep tissue massage for the soul.
All right.
You're my sort of inaugural, and all they are is a series of questions that you can answer as deep or as short as you like. But there's a lot of them, and I'm going to try to get through as many as I can.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that takes us off on a tangent, rock and roll, let's stay there. Do you long for a different time in your life?
Nope.
Okay. What kind of memories, people, or music are you nostalgic about?
Music, people. Like I said before, I think just real artists, true artists.
Great. What are you terrified or irrational about?
Terrified of the future of our country. There we go.
Yeah, that's a great one. We can talk about that if you want, or we can just pretend we heard it from someone else and keep moving forward. Do you have an inner monologue? And if so, is it so loud it becomes an outer monologue?
Sometimes I definitely have an inner monologue. I think everyone does, but unfortunately, sometimes it's a bit negative. But I'm working on that. Sometimes, it's hard to get rid of that that chatter, that inner negativity. But I think it's a part of, also because this is my third year of sobriety. So being sober has definitely helped with that. So yeah, I do have that very loud inner monologue for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? We can't skip past that. May we talk about the sobriety thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So without getting too deep or personal here, the sobriety thing. How can I ask this question without asking the yucky stuff?
No,
I
it's
guess
all
I
good,
would just
man.
say, how did life change for you once you made the choice to become sober?
It completely flipped on itself. A complete transformation. It felt like a lot of a lot of people that are sober explain it this way too, but it feels like a rebirth, like you're being reborn. Like you see the world completely different because you're forced to face yourself and you're forced to deal with the struggles head on. You have absolutely no way to medicate it. So you're forced to face yourself and do the hard work that no one wants to do. But once you do it, you're at peace.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you, I assume the whole 12-step consideration is obviously not necessarily for everyone, but I also know there's a deep well of privacy there. So when you go to any meetings, I've been to one, and I went to a 12-step meeting because I wasn't sure if I needed part of that program, if that was right for me in my own struggles in life. Were you inspired by anyone in your life? Did somebody come up to you and say, "Hey, Alex, I see you have an issue. Join me for this program"? Or was it just man, I'm rubbing the rungs of the bottom of the ladder here. I need to fix myself.
Yeah, it was definitely a harsh realization, basically, with the current relationship I'm in. It just I basically just said, look, enough is enough. This is absolutely destroying your life. I wasn't the type of person that I wouldn't like get up and start drinking right away. It was more of like a weekend binge type of thing that just lasted too long. And like there'd be times when I would stop for a few months and I would start again. And it was just like, it's not worth the risk of, because I would become a person that I was ashamed of. Just, you say things you're not proud of,
right?
Do things you're not proud of. So I'm like, I just need to make the change. And so I quit cold turkey. And I didn't, I haven't done AA. So maybe in the future, if I feel like I need it, but fortunately I was, I was strong enough to just stop. So I know it's really hard for a lot of people to do that, and you need support, but I don't know. I just toughened up and was like, yeah, you can do it. Just stop. And I did. So it's been 3 years.
Yeah. That's rad, man. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And I'm happy for you. I know that my situation was about masking pain, which I imagine it's probably the same for everybody, just different variations on the pain, right? None of us are better than anyone else. Do you mind sharing where your initial pains came from?
That's still a work in progress, but I know the majority of it is just self-doubt and insecurity, because I think when you grow up in certain situations, but I think it was just a lot of me not loving myself and not thinking I'm good enough, and letting certain, I've been in certain relationships with certain people that were, I'm just come out and say it, like it's just toxic relationships where certain individuals can make you feel like, oh, you're not good enough, and you're not at this level, you're not making X amount of money, you're not doing, all these things, so you're not good enough.
Right. The value thing.
Those kind of relationships, or, over time, took their toll. But at the end of the day, it was my decision. So it was my decision to stay with certain people, and I take accountability and responsibility. But it's just a combination of a lot of things over time, But yeah, I think the deep root of it is just not loving myself enough. So now I've learned to be better at that.
Yeah, that's one, thank you for saying this out loud.
Yeah.
I know these are, again, private things, and sometimes it's really hard, but I've found that the more the more mature people, the people who have walked through those sort of fiery pits and are completely transparent and open to sharing every painful moment, there's not only catharsis for themselves, but there's catharsis for the person in their world. There's an understanding that, okay, this person recognizes there's a brokenness, and in the same token, there's a brokenness in all of us. And how can we make the world better? By sharing what's wrong with us, so other people feel that they're on the same page with us and we're not lording ourselves over them in some secret way, right? Because to me, that's the focus of anxiety. It's this feeling of, I can't control this situation. I don't know what's coming. I don't know what's going. And on top of that, I feel like everybody else is thriving and I'm not. And everything gets amplified because of it. And it's so nice to have somebody you admire from a distance or right next to you who says, dude, I'm walking through a really brutal thing. And when you turn to them, you can't believe that they're saying it, because from the outside, we like to put on that, right? That mask, that feeling that, hey, we've got it all handled.
Man, you nailed it. Absolutely. And, I think what you said about just talking about it and being transparent, that's a big reason why I started my podcast too, because pretty much it's safe to say every single person has suffered. Every single person has gone through hardship. Every single person has gone through some kind of insecurity. So that's why I started my podcast, to just basically speak with people that I know, people in the industry, fellow musicians, pretty much anyone that has gone through any kind of struggle or suffered, or which is everyone. So that's why I started it. And I just like to hear other people's stories, just how, I'm telling you a bit about myself. So it's very therapeutic in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Some positives here. What do you dream about?
I dream about, it's funny to say, like, it's a good question, but I pretty much dream about just what I'm doing already, just trying to be a bit more successful at it. And it's funny that you asked that, because I'm extremely grateful, man, for my life, for my career, even though there's really, really dark times. And it's mainly just financial things, man, because I can honestly say, like, I'm living my dream. I get to make music. I have a studio. I've worked with some of my most coveted musicians and people that I literally had their posters on my walls as a kid, like people I've actually worked with. So I'm living the dream. It's just the economics of it can be extremely challenging. So I'm working through that, but I just dream about hopefully a better time for our economy and our country, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this brings up something that I've thought about for, I don't know, as long as I've been alive, which is, why do you think that the arts, and when I say the arts, I mean in general, music, comedy, acting, whatever you want to call it, why there is this assumption with the public that it should be free? There's a very strange, we haven't earned our way, or that we have to earn our way, that we have to give things away constantly before we're ever, reimbursed for our time. Why is that?
Yeah, this is an ongoing challenge, and this is something that I think most people in our industry have dealt with. But a lot of it, I think for some people, they need, since it's nothing tangible. It's like you're sent files on the computer. You know what I mean? It's nothing tangible. It's nothing they can hold. It's nothing they can like collect and cherish. Like people are. Man, I've had all kinds of experiences with people like not valuing the process and valuing music, even though they come to you for a service, but they expect it to be like, oh, well, it costs more than my car insurance this month, so it's not worth it, or something stupid like that. It's just like, and I've seen lots of, all kinds of situations, man. But I've had people like say, oh, well, that's too expensive, but then like they go out and buy a Tesla, and it's like, it's just your priorities. You know what I mean? It's right. Like your album lasts forever. It outlives you. It lasts forever, literally. So to me, it's like it should be thought of as an investment, as something you have to save for, as something that you have to really, really, really cherish. And, I don't know. I still struggle with that. Like why people, music is just being more and more devalued. So it's a difficult thing, but yeah, you're right, man. It's so true.
Yeah. I have kind of an answer for it. And I know you didn't ask me. It is your question after all. But I think it's because artists were born with the gene that says we must be creative, that we must share our gift with others. That's the beauty, right? Like if I were given the largest drum set in the world today and a stadium to play it in and nobody to play it for, it would be worthless. It would be valueless, right? We need others to embrace our gift. And I think artists will do anything to be heard, meaning we'll give it away first. We don't necessarily recognize our value. We know we have a gift. We know it's singular to us, but we almost always give it away. We don't necessarily recognize its monetary value. I don't know. I'm talking in circles, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, I can relate to that, and I think it's just some, people that, okay, from my experience, the people that I've had the best experience with in the studio, like throughout the whole process, they come into the situation like with all the knowledge. They understand, they get it. They understand that, okay, this is something so sacred, just the process. It's like, first of all, it's your music. Okay. This is something that's extremely, if it's so important to you, like why not put, the best you can into it, just because it means you have to save up money for it. Like it doesn't, I don't know. It's just, it's such a, like I said, it lasts forever. So just the fact that you're going to try and cut corners and lowball and just like try and get it for the least possible. It's like you definitely get what you pay for in music and in most industries. It's like if you want the best, it's not gonna be cheap. So yeah, just like it's just a constant battle, really. It's just with the business side of music.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. So I have to ask you a dumb question before I let you go.
Okay.
It's a dumb question. And you've heard it asked a million different ways in other shows, but I'm hoping mine's a little different. It's not. If you were to die today, what would you say is the best thing you've ever accomplished?
Oh, okay. That's a really hard question to answer, but I'm going to say one thing that instantly popped into my mind. It's strange, but it means a lot to me because, my mom is a big reason why I got into music. She played all kinds of records when I was growing up. She played like Motown and Prince and a bunch of like Broadway soundtracks. Like she loved musicals, but her favorite artist is Prince. And, I had it in the back of my mind, like, man, it'd be awesome if I could at some point in my career, like work with him in some way. And I've met people that have worked in the studio with him, but obviously since he passed, now it's not possible. Yeah. But what I was able to do was, it was a big moment for me that it didn't feel extremely monumental at the time because like I was actually working, but, I was able to, over time, I was able to get in at Sunset Sound, and I've done a few sessions there, and there's a room there called the Prince Room where he recorded a lot of his work, and he had like it was Studio 3 at Sunset Sound, so he recorded a bunch of Purple Rain there and so many songs, and he had it booked out for a couple of years, but I was able to book some sessions there, and for one of the sessions, I invited my mom over, and she came over with my dad, and I just got to, let her chill in Prince's sacred studio where he made all of her favorite records. And to me, that was really important. Yeah. So, I got to show her like, look, I'm doing something right. Like I'm on a decent path. Like I get to show you like, hey, this is where Prince did all of his records. Yeah. I wasn't able to like get so far to be able to work with him and like introduce you to him, but this is the closest I can get. So that meant a lot to me. So, yeah, that's it.
That's a fantastic answer, man. Look, I think you're an amazing guy, and I really mean that. It's not, what's the terminology? I'm not blowing smoke. I really do believe in you as a person. I believe in you. Gosh, I don't want to say a concept, but I just believe that what you're doing and what you're creating is singular, is really, truly unique to you. I do love the music that I've heard. I haven't heard it all, of course. You have a huge library of work you've created, and that's really something to say, man. I mean, so many people, it's what you mentioned earlier. So many people will go through life striking at objects, but never really achieving anything because they don't necessarily have the direction. They don't necessarily know what it is they want. They just know they want what that guy has. It's, something physical, maybe money or travel or, anything we see nowadays online, just to be an influencer, whatever the heck that means, but there's no plan.
Yeah.
The beauty of what you're doing is there might not be a plan, to be fair, but there is direction. And I think, a guy like you gives me so much hope because there's still purity in the work. And I really genuinely mean that. And I know today was very short, and I know we couldn't necessarily connect on a cellular level, right? But I'm hoping that one day we can have an extended conversation, or that we can meet each other in person and just really spend some time together, because I genuinely am impressed with you and I dig what you are, and I think we would have a great time together. Thank
you, man. I appreciate that. And I agree. It's, we still got 20 minutes, but I think like long form podcasters. So I love them, man. That's why I think what you're doing and what a lot of people are doing with these long form conversations, it just shows a whole different side of people instead of these quick, short edited things that, these TikTok videos and all that crap. It's like, it completely exposes, it just completely exposes the individual. And, I prefer it. That's why that's another reason why I started mine. Like I don't get too crazy in mine. That some of them go to maybe an hour and a half at most, but I see like some of yours get like, up into 2 hours. So that's awesome.
I did a 3.5 hour one a few years ago, and a buddy of mine called me up and he's like, Rob, like what the hell, dude? Like cut it into 6 pieces and upload it to YouTube, in 30-minute increments. And I'm like, isn't the whole point? I mean, look, I'm not Joe Rogan. I'm not Mark Maron. I'm me. But if that can work for them, and I realize that they may have celebrities and people think that's what they want to hear. But the reality, Alex, is everybody has an amazing voice. I could literally walk down the street and grab 10 different people and hold 10 different 90-minute interviews and get incredible tidbits on how to live my life better.
Oh yeah, man. That's why there's I don't know if you've heard of this channel, but it's exactly what you just said. It's called Soft White Underbelly. Have you heard of that channel?
Yes, I have. That's the one where the guy interviews a lot of drug addicts.
He interviews a lot of
sex workers, etc.
People that live on Skid Row and people like in all of the trenches in Los Angeles and San Francisco. But it's so fascinating, man. Like I encourage you to like check more of it out when you have some time. But like I was just watching one earlier today. It's like they're so heart-wrenching, man. Some of the stories that these people tell, these are just everyday people that you walk by every single day, and you would never know the depths that they've suffered, man. It's so heartfelt. But I relate to that, man, and I really appreciate what you're doing as well. And like with your podcast and having great conversations with people, and really just being truthful and passionate and laying it all out. So I appreciate your work as well.
You've been listening to Sentimental Illness with Rob Leland. Our theme song, Machine, has been graciously provided by Harris Heller. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast media. You can directly support the show on Patreon as well, where you can find us at patreon.com/This is Sentimental Illness. It also helps us a lot if you rate the show online. So jump out there and give us 5 stars. And lastly, always remember, your mind will overthink everything, but your heart can never love enough. See you soon.